Hello and welcome to another Exercise Your Rights. Today we have Senah Lloyd, an emerging author who lives in the rural mountains of Southwest Virginia. She has enjoyed horror movies and collecting ghost stories since childhood. She's an affiliate member of the Horror Writers Association. Her stories about vampires, ghosts, aliens, killers, and strange creatures are featured in several anthologies, podcasts, and magazines under her pen name, Sarah Siegfried. Lloyd will be releasing the entire collection of her tales very soon, so we're going to be watching for that, and she will be back if I have anything to say about it. She's also authored nonfiction blog posts about the horror genre and mental health, and was approached recently about a special collection of stories from her rural roots. She works in the field of mental health and is an artist and dabbles in scare acting and special effects makeup. She lives with her spouse and her black cat in a home originally built by a mortician. So I am very jealous on so many counts now. But I do want to ask just really quickly, because we are going to be talking about mental health today. The reason why you and I have even met is because of the mental health initiative, the mental health awareness initiative from the HWA. And I really think this is an important topic, but I really want to find out what is scare acting first.
Haunted house acting.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a hobby, like a Halloween attraction, haunted house acting.
That's fascinating. That is like so cool.
It's so much fun.
I got to do that last year once. That was my first time. I don't think it was very effective because I would scream and then everybody would like kind of giggle. So I think I need to work on that.
It's tons of fun. I nearly blew out my voice screaming at people.
One time that you can do it and not have everybody be upset with you.
Yeah, they pay for it. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I'm adding that to my repertoire of things I want to like get a talent in. So wait, we're here to talk about mental health today, and I want to find out first, how did you become an advocate for mental health? What personal experiences may have contributed to that?
Well, I've been a therapist for years, and I've had my own tangles with mental health issues. These things started happening when I was a teenager. I had my first bout of depression, and I didn't even know what to call it at the time. I was just weepy and I didn't understand it. Everything was going great. There was no reason for it, but it was a bad time. And, I recovered, and then I had a few more bouts with it in my 20s, and became a therapist because I understood what it felt like, and I wanted to help other people to feel better. And then I had this last episode with it about 2 years ago, and that was really bad. It really got bad about a year ago, and I had to change everything
Oh, wow.
to cope with it. Yeah. So I noticed some things that were problematic when I was dealing with this last episode, and really wanted to do what I could to bring awareness to it and encourage people to get help if they need it.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And I think one thing that you said that really struck out to me is everything is fine, and you don't know why this is happening.
Right.
I think that must be like the confusing part that you're probably, and I'm just guessing, but I would feel like I would blame myself then. Like, why am I feeling like this? There's something wrong with me because everything is fine. I'm the one, that's not playing the game right.
Yeah, I was really confused because I had really, when you're a teenager, your friends are your world. I had great friends. I had a neat little boyfriend. I had everything was going great. My grades were fine.
Yeah.
I was planning for college, and I had a job, I had a car, all the teenage things, but
Yeah.
I was just weepy, and I couldn't stop, and I was down, and like I said, everything was going great, but there was something on the inside that I felt broken. Uh,
Yeah.
and like you said, I was wondering what is wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? Why can't I be normal? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And normal. That's always like one of those things I'm like, what the heck is normal? Show me a normal person. I'm going to show you a liar. Because
Normal
they're,
is a
yeah.
setting on the washing machine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's kind of like society. We have this sense of normal, but it's not necessarily like it's unrealistic. Do you think that? Well, that's a leading question. Do you think I'm right when I say what do you think are some of the most pressing issues of society? I mean, that I feel like is one of them. This unrealistic line of what we should all be, which is ridiculous.
Well, when you're when you're greeting someone, "Hi, how are you?" "I'm fine." "How are you?" You know,
Don't tell me how you really are.
yeah, I don't want to know. I expect
Yeah.
one response, and we're going to go on and go on about our day. You don't want to hear, "Well, I can't sleep. I think of gloom and doom constantly. I wish I wasn't here." Um, you know, you just go with, "Fine. How are you?" Um, so, I think the societal expectations are to um, not have problems and not talk about feelings. Really, we're doing better.
Mhm.
We're
Yeah.
doing better, but um, you know, crying in public spaces, not really what they're going for. So,
Yeah.
and I recognized that at the time that these things first started.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that stems a lot from that whole like that mindset of like pull yourself up on your boot by your bootstraps and keep a stiff upper lip and all this. We don't get to have emotions. We just have to, plow through and be perfect.
No, we don't. And you know, how how dare you have a problem?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Why can't you be part of the system? Be like everybody else. Like all of those the
yeah, go along
trophy.
with the flow.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't see other kids at school crying. I didn't see any of that going on. So I thought, well, um, something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Um, but learning about it really helps. And I think that there's a lot of misinformation about mental health issues, about mental illness, um, lots of stereotypes, and a lot of
Yeah.
problems with accessibility to needed services. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about accessibility a little bit. Like what you mean by that, and what do you think would be like maybe some good policy changes or reforms that could help with that, like that accessibility?
Um, well, money can be a problem. If
Yeah,
a person doesn't have money, doesn't have a job, doesn't have health coverage. I live in the U.S. and we have to be concerned about insurance, and it's very expensive here. Um,
that's one
I,
reason why I moved to Brazil. I was there.
Take me with you.
I
No,
know. Come on.
but that is a concern here where I live.
Hmm.
We have to have health coverage. And then there are services for lower income and indigent people, um, but there's kind of a gap between the indigent and the folks with resources. And there aren't things to meet the need in the gap.
Yeah.
Mhm. So that's one barrier. Another is even knowing where to look for services. Um, in my state, we have public mental health care, and that's accessible to anybody. So I'm grateful that that's there. Um, there there can be problems getting in with private providers. When I had my last, you know, episode of depression, I tried to seek a psychiatrist on my own. My doctor was out of town, and I've been seeing her for 20 years. I didn't want to go see somebody else I didn't know. So I tried to book with a psychiatrist, and it was going to be like a 2-week wait.
Oh, wow.
And the way I was feeling, I didn't have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It was pretty dire.
Yeah.
And so my therapist couldn't see me for a while. And being a therapist myself, I know that you can't always squeeze that last one in. You've got to have boundaries, or you're going to have
Your own
problems.
health, yeah, your own mental health.
Yeah, you have to have boundaries and take care of your own mental health, and not put everyone else first. You can't. So, and I needed to talk to somebody. So my local public mental health facility got me in. A lot of these organizations have crisis centers, and a doctor that you can see right there before you leave that day. You get set up with a counselor appointment, and you can just roll in and get all these services. So that's really great. I'm not trying to do a commercial for them, but look at your local mental health center. But sometimes that will get you in the fastest, and that's what I had to do. I needed to be seen quickly. But I knew kind of where to go, because I'd been a therapist. I'd worked for that organization, and something that I noticed, another barrier, is internal stigma. Because I was a bit afraid to approach these people with this organization that I'd worked with.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I thought, well, we want to help people. We want people to come in. We don't judge. We don't look down on anyone. There's no reason to, and we wouldn't do that. But I was judging myself. I felt like I failed. I felt like, well, how can I be an effective mental health worker when I'm having my own challenges?
Yeah.
So there was some internal stigma there, and it's like, I don't want anybody to know that I'm having these problems. What are they going to think? And it's not fair that I did that, because this is how we eradicate that stigma. We talk about it. And we come out from behind the shadows, and we talk about it. And, if someone maybe sees this or hears it and they're struggling, they can go seek some help. Or if they know someone who's struggling, they can get some help, and they can see, the face of someone who is addressing these issues and come out the other side. And I'm okay now.
That's so awesome. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story, for being brave enough to go seek help, and then to share it here, because that's kind of the point of this, is that if anybody's watching, you're not alone. If you feel like you have that happening, and I think one of the things that happens is it's the invisible thing. Like, you can't see it. We're not walking around with an emoji, a sad emoji,
No.
or, and so it can be easy to discount, because what you see is what the problem is. You have a toothache, it hurts, your breath smells bad, or, you're having a heart attack. I don't remember the signs for heart attack. I'd be in so much trouble. But mental health, what is the sign? There are signs, but I think we're not as familiar with them. We just kind of, and we mask it. We tend to mask it. No, I just have to get through this meeting. I have to get through this day. I have to get through the night. I have to get through the weekend. And why we don't have to live like that.
Yeah. It's just, if you have a broken arm, people can see you in a cast, and maybe be gentle with you. Like, oh, you can't climb a ladder, or you can't
I'm not
ride
going
this
to yell at you. about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to yell at you for fumbling a little bit in the grocery line.
Mhm.
And the Victorians were very strange people, but they had a lot of mourning customs. And when someone was grieving, you could see on the outside, you could see by what they wore or an armband or something.
Mhm.
You knew that they were having a rough time, and you could be gentle with them. We don't do that now. For the most part, grief and mental illness are masked. They're invisible.
Yeah.
And you know it's an invisible disability.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I mean, I feel like that's changing. Needs
Yeah,
to. It's so far to go, though. We have so far to go with that.
we really do. And a lot of cultures, it's frowned upon to talk about one's issues. It's discouraged to talk about one's family. We keep that
Mhm.
private. um, Again, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. Get with the program.
Yeah, just stop it.
Yeah.
uh,
Click
and
that button.
I so want to.
Yeah.
If there was a button, if there was a switch I could flip and not have felt that way, I would. Um,
Yeah. When
but
I think that's the assumption, you can just quit. You can, and that's not a fair assumption because if you could, you would. Like anybody, if I could, any of us would do something like that. Oh, just stop it. Okay. Why didn't I
okay,
think of that?
don't be sad.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, all right,
You have
it's
nothing to be
fixed.
sad about. Look at your life. Everything's so great. What's wrong with you? Like that kind of dialogue is
That makes it
not
worse.
helpful. Yeah.
That makes it so much worse.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
those are some of the things not to do.
don't do that.
Yeah, please.
Don't do that. And another thing, people. I know my experience with depression. I I thought about gloom and doom all the time. I had trouble getting out of bed. Now that's the funny thing. I had trouble getting out of bed, but I had trouble sleeping. So you're just kind of laying in bed, just kind of there. Um,
Yeah.
so and you feel lazy. Things pile up. Um, I kind of felt like I was swimming in peanut butter.
Yeah. I think that's probably a really good way to express that.
Yeah. Things that were important to me, just I didn't really care about them anymore. I used to be really athletic, and every opportunity I'd go for a bike ride or go for a run or go for a hike, and didn't care about any of that. When this episode happened, when I was at the darkest point, I had a trip planned with some friends, and they were really excited, talking to my husband about it. And he comes back, he's like, "Why didn't you tell me you're planning this trip? It's going to be great." And I'm like, "I just feel like it's not going to happen."
Yeah.
And it didn't, because I wasn't well enough to go. When the time came, I was still adjusting to medications, and it's still really fragile. And I didn't, feel like it would be a good thing to go that far away with folks that didn't quite know what to do about it.
Hmm.
I have the best friends in the world, but and the best husband too, by the way. But you know, they didn't know what to do. And so but yeah, things that mattered just didn't anymore.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's really, to me, important to point out your role in this as somebody that could recognize what your limits are. Recognize that I have a chihuahua
I,
scrambling around at the floor here. Sorry.
I have
Um,
a cat somewhere here, so she'll come herself known in a minute.
but you had the ability to recognize where those limits were. Where you, I shouldn't be this far away, instead of just pushing it and forcing it. And that's probably a lot because of your training as well, that you can recognize that.
Yeah, and I kind of at the time I was thinking more about others than myself, and I thought, well, if I have, if I break down and start crying, and they're not, I don't want to do that to them. But really, honestly, it what I knew it wasn't right for me to try to do that at the time. Now, before everything happened and I got some help, I was really pushing myself. I was going nonstop, and I didn't feel well. I didn't feel like doing it, but I did,
Yeah.
and that made me feel even worse. So I learned.
Yeah. It doesn't
Yeah.
fix it to ignore it. It just prolongs and probably makes it worse, maybe.
Yeah, well, imagine holding a ball underwater in the pool. I think we've all done it as kids. Um, it's not going to stay under there. And
Yeah.
instead of just coming up, it's going to really come up. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what it's like to just try to ignore it and press on. Um, you can for a little while, but it's not going to work for very long, and things are going to be a lot worse if you just try to ignore it and go on your merry way, because it's not going to be merry.
Yeah.
At least this is my experience.
Well, and everybody around you is going to be in that splash zone.
Yeah, yeah, they will. For me, I just kind of kept my head down, and I kind of just dropped out of society for a little while. I didn't go out much for a while, and this was all during COVID times too. So you really that was another layer of everything. Um,
Yeah, everybody was isolated.
yeah, and I just kind of worked on myself. I took time off from work, and that was important for me to do because I couldn't care for others' emotional and mental health when I was struggling with my own. So I took some time off, and then when I started working again, I took a different role. I still work in mental health care, but um, behind the scenes, and um, kind of auditing paperwork instead of doing the frontline work.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the people who do the frontline work, because, even a step back from the work, I can still, um, I can still imagine the person sitting there and, in their grief or their sadness or their anxiety. And this is the place for me to be right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you emerged and that you're that, you know what I mean, feeling more, just feeling better about everything.
Yeah, and you have to do the things to feel better, and
Mhm.
um, you know, it, and this is everything I've said is only my opinion and my experience. I'm not giving anybody advice. I'm not representing any mental health care organization, just to be clear. But you have to do what works for you, and you have to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Um, I have to take medication, and not until I feel better,
Yeah.
but I take it so I can feel better.
Yeah.
It's not take it until everything seems all right and then just stop. This is something that I have to keep up with. I have to constantly be mindful of my thoughts, and whether they're turned into the negative or self-loathing or something like that. I'm trying to stay positive and notice the positive things. So those are all and I see a therapist, I see a doctor. And those are probably going to be ongoing things for me, although maybe not as frequently as they were. It's already stepped off quite a bit, but
That's good.
it's something that for me, I don't feel like I can cure, but I can manage, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's fabulous.
thank you.
I think it's important. One of the things that you said is that you're not speaking for everybody. This is what's worked for you.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of one of the things that maybe is not helpful. Oh, I'm just going to go out on a limb. It's not helpful. It is not helpful when somebody says, well, I just do this. Why can't you lose weight? I did this. Why can't you stop smoking? I did this. It's easy, or however, you can imagine the dialogue.
Everybody's different.
Yeah. So from your perspective, what are some of the things that helped you? Because that's a good place, though, as well, where you can say, like, this worked for me. It might work for you. What are some of the things that did work for you that you could share?
What worked for me was being open about it and reaching out to somebody. And that kind of got the ball rolling to really get the deeper help that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be really hard to really be honest with somebody about struggling.
Yeah.
So that, hopefully most people have a friend. I had somebody that I felt comfortable reaching out to, that I used to work with, a former supervisor. I was able to reach out to her and say, this is happening. I think I need to do something about it, like, quickly. And so she hooked me up with where I needed to go and who I needed to talk to. And I just showed up and they just enveloped me in services. So that was perfect.
That's awesome.
But something else that works for me is trying to do something, even if I don't feel like it. Even if I don't feel like getting up and do the laundry, doing a little something. And if I can do that little something, then I can do a little more, maybe. Or maybe I feel better having done this little thing, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I make an effort to try to interact with my friends regularly, whether it's online or in person. Um, they're my support system, and having that regular contact with them, they can tell when something's not right, and they'll cheer me up or they'll encourage me. Um, and my husband's been great with all this. He's been very understanding, and um, he hasn't said most of the unhelpful things that people say. So
That's good.
yeah. So I think for me, having my people really helped because I got where I got by keeping things to myself. So I started getting better when I started opening up about it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think probably one of the things that we fear is that we'll be judged.
Yeah.
And I don't think if they're your friends, if they're people that care about you, they won't be judging. They want you to be better.
Right. Absolutely. And something I tried to do was turn it around, like, well, if this was one of my friends, what would I want them to do?
Yeah,
And
that's a good way to look at it.
yeah, you're always kinder to your friends than you are yourself. So that's something I continually ask myself. If my friend made this mistake, would I judge them? No.
Not, yeah.
No, I wouldn't. So sometimes turning it around like that has been helpful for me.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So let's switch it around to writing real quick
Yes.
because we are writers, and this is the Horror Writers Association YouTube channel. What one of the things that, especially as horror writers, we have to deal with is stigma, the stigmas of mental health. I mean, this is what a serial killer looks like. He's always this type of person. This is, it's always the crazy guy that did it, kind of thing. How would you address some of that? What are some of the more positive ways? I mean, obviously, we've got the mental health initiative, which we're both working on as a way to try to get that more mental health, the more positive connection there, the more positive way to portray horror.
Well, with that, it, you know, in the media, there's always the crazy person who is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the reality is, someone with a mental illness is more likely to be vulnerable to be victimized by someone who appears normal. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So in
And that would be
reality,
that liar person we talked about. They appear
ooh,
normal. That's the liar.
yeah, yeah, nobody's quite normal, but yeah, people with mental health issues aren't dangerous. They're not in the bushes, lurking there to kill people. Um, they're just like you and me. They are you and me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
just nothing. Having worked in a lot of mental health settings, nothing you see in the media is how it actually is. I just want to. Nothing has been the way I expected from seeing movies or reading some fiction back in the day. It's totally different. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Well, and you may not know this off the top of your head, but do you have any books that you can recommend? If you don't, I'll get them from you later and we'll link them down in the description. But do you have anything that just comes off the top of your head as what is a good example of horror that treats that in a balanced and realistic way?
you know, I can't think of any off the top of my head. But something that we would be looking for would be something that's balanced and doesn't portray the person with the mental illness as the villain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, something that reflects reality. Um, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. You know, I've written some things about depression and insomnia.
Yeah.
I can't think of any. That doesn't mean isn't something really great out there that gives a balanced and responsible perspective, but I just can't.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I can think of a few. I can think of something written by Senah Lloyd, most likely. Because tell me about some of the stuff that you've written like that, like some of your stories where you've used mental health.
Well, and even being a professional and having gone through it, I'm not perfect. I'm sure I've made mistakes as well. But one story I wrote, the dark depths. Um, it's ironically it's about a therapist who's overworked and hasn't been taking time off to take care of herself, and she's really depressed, and she goes out in search of a creature of the night to end her. Um,
Interesting.
but it has a happy ending for everybody. Just to throw that out there. And the other one, The Art of Nightmares. It is about a person with insomnia and a really weird sleep schedule, and she's trying to assimilate into normal society and have a normal routine. And so she starts taking sleep medication, and she's been warned by her doctors, don't get up, don't do anything because there might be some weird side effects. And she has some encounters with the sleep demon. Um, but, again, another happy ending, and
Yeah.
a really happy ending for her. This demon influenced her art, and she gets hired to do video game design, and she doesn't have to assimilate into the 9 to 5 workforce.
Oh, that's excellent.
So
That's
it all ended up well.
I love that. All right, and we need to find these. Your bio will be in the description, and the links to your website. So I want to go look for these. I think these sound excellent, which
Great.
makes me think of writing as therapy,
Yes.
because those seemed a bit, I can see elements of you in those stories. Do you use writing? I mean, I know I do. Do you think those were therapeutic pieces for you, where you're kind of working out some, real issues that are happening?
Oh, absolutely. At different stages in my life, I've written about different topics, and I can totally see some of myself in the characters that I come up with. Um, I've dealt with grief through writing. I've dealt with the depression through writing. I've dealt with anxiety. Um, I dealt with different fears. Um, you know, something every therapist I've seen has told me to do is journal. Um, and journaling can be really therapeutic. It is for me. Um, and the fiction is really helpful to me. And people might think, well, good grief, you're writing this gory, horrible stuff. How is that therapeutic? No wonder you're depressed. But it really it it does something in my brain. It settles certain areas, it lights certain areas up. Um, and I think just the creative process is helpful for me. Um, and just doing something is helpful. But you know, um, bad moods and nightmares have given me some good material.
Yeah. Do you think that's why you're attracted to horror writing specifically, maybe?
I don't know. It's just been there all along for me. Even when I was a little kid, I would read scary things. When I was a little kid, I was reading Stephen King way before I should have. Um, you know, um, and I actually had to hide this stuff because I grew up in a really religious, conservative home, and like, why you don't why do you don't want to read this stuff?
Yeah, that's dark. And it's not for little girls.
It's not for little girls, exactly. I was supposed to be reading Barbie books and
Hmm.
unicorns and all that stuff, but I wanted the monsters and the ghosts and the old haunted castles and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You and me both. We would have been like hiding out together in the clubhouse with our books.
yeah. Well, look at this. Oh, have you
Yeah.
seen this one? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Horror is yeah. I know there are more women coming on the scene, but we typically think of fellows as the writers.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I am glad that that's changing. Um,
Yes.
and speaking of the changing, we're just about out of time, but I want to talk about you and all the things that you are doing as a woman writer and as a woman horror writer that's changing that.
Oh, well, I'm working on my own collection, and that'll hopefully be out later this year. And I've probably jinxed it by even mentioning it, but I was approached to write a collection. And I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but it's some stuff that's been kind of percolating since my childhood, some old interests. So I got approached
Hmm.
about that. So that's in the works.
Yeah.
Um, so that's going to be really, really cool. My fingers are crossed. And I'm just going to keep going down my rabbit holes with things I come up with when I'm driving down the road or going for a walk or wake up in a cold sweat. Ooh, that's, or, even something simple like driving down the road and my husband saying, well, I wonder what's in that bag. And I'm like, maybe it's a
Hmm.
body part. And he's like, you're weird. I'm like, you married me.
I know, right? Who's the weirdo? The weirdo or the weirdo that married the weirdo?
Yeah, but I'm just gonna keep on doing it and putting stuff out there.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for being here, for being brave enough to share your story, for being brave enough to come out of that, and to be wise enough to recognize where you needed to go and the tools that you needed to do, and for sharing it with everybody who's watching. And if anybody who's watching right now is having struggling right now, what would you advise to them, as from you personally, not medical?
Yeah, I can't.
We always want to
Yeah,
specify that this is not
yeah,
professional medical advice here.
yeah, it's not. Well, you know, just human to human. If you're struggling, please reach out to somebody. Um, somebody. Um, and I think most countries in the world have a suicide hotline. Um, reach out, just call.
Yeah,
Um, you know, um, that's the best piece of advice, is to reach out. There's help out there. With the pandemic, telehealth is accessible now. Help is a button away, and some providers will work with you financially too. Don't let that be a barrier. Um, just reach out, and if things are really, Google suicide prevention, Google suicide, and Google will come up with the suicide hotline and say,
yeah,
hey, you know, are you okay? Call this. Um, so every country has one. So just, I can't emphasize it enough. Reach out to somebody. I'm really glad that I did, and it took a
me
lot,
too.
but
Me too.
definitely the resources are there. And with media, there's good places and bad places with social media, and you know where to go. You can tell what's negative and what's not, and go to the uplifting places. Don't go to the places that trash talk each other and put everybody and everything down. Go to the positive places, and there's support out there for everybody with every situation. So
Absolutely.
get
I
get to talking about it.
I think that's one of the reasons why I was so attracted to the horror community at large, because we seem to be very, we understand monsters and otherness, and typically as a whole, I can't speak for every single person, but it does seem to be one of the most welcoming and non-judgmental and warm and embracing community of all the communities, the Halloween people, that I have ever come across in my life. So
Absolutely. I've not had a negative experience with any of those folks. Um, they're all really welcoming and accepting of you as you are.
mhm,
So
absolutely. Well, I'm going to put links in the description of places to get help if anybody would like to look there, if you feel like you might take advantage of that. As well as we have the Mental Health Awareness Initiative, which I'll also link below, and your website and biography. And I just want to thank you so much for being here, for sharing this super, really important. I mean, this is probably one of the most important shows I've done on this topic. So thank you for being here and being that.
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you, everybody who's watching right now. If you're watching on the replay, I'm glad that you were able to catch it. I hope you'll give the Horror Writers Association YouTube channel a subscribe so you can keep up on all these shows. And I know we have some others as well. I think there's a Nuts and Bolts that's been happening that I need to catch. And we'll be back next week with another Exercise Your Rights. And I believe that's Frances Ippolito. I could be wrong, but she's coming. So thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you next week.